welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today on Jeff Pilson. How are you?
I am fine.
You are very health conscious with yoga and meditation.
I
I
am.
want to talk about that too because it's pretty cool. I think, especially because you were doing it earlier on before it became more of a not commercialized, but Eastern Western medicine thing. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It wasn't as
There
cool.
was some commercialization to it. Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of cool to talk about that too. Um, First, probably the most exciting thing is right now is you're towards the end of being with Foreigner, which is such a fantastic group, and being able to spend a good part of your life with probably, I'm sure, a band you grew up loving and everyone we all have is iconic, and
Yeah,
become a
yeah,
member of that and share that. Being at the end, is it kind of like a bittersweet type of thing at this point?
exactly. It is bittersweet. I mean, the band is actually sounding, playing, singing, getting along better than I mean, it's we're in a fantastic place right now. This tour has been so much fun this year. Um, I mean, it is. It's going to be bittersweet. The audiences have been great. The crowds are great. But it will be nice to not travel as much. I mean, 100 shows a year for 20 years. That's a lot.
A lot, yeah.
I'm ready to slow that down. And we'll see exactly where we go from here. But I know that after next year, because we're going to go till the end of 24. But I know
Yeah.
after next year, no more of the long tours. And yes, it's bittersweet, but again, just trying to really appreciate it right now and enjoy it because it's been so much fun. And I mean, and I've even been in a frigging wheelchair, and it's been fun. So I got to say, doing good.
Well, I mean, you're such a. I can see where it'd be so tiring. Like, I don't know how you guys as musicians just tour and do it and go on and smile and have the worst day ever physically traveling. And I don't think there's enough coffee for me to do that. I'm telling you right now.
Really.
I have some days like so to be able to do that and do it for so long is very admirable. It's not just it's the 22 hours before, the cliche thing, but
Yeah.
it's like I couldn't imagine people on a regular day to day putting that smile on. There's other stuff going on. You get the call from home. You have other things going on in your life. You got a show to do. It's a show.
Yeah,
It's a
but
job.
fortunately, I've always been very lucky. When I'm playing music, I'm able to just get myself lost in it.
Okay.
Even, I mean, if I were in a country band, I could do that. And I'm not, I mean, well, actually, I kind of like country music, so that's a bad example. If I were in a
Well,
polka band,
old country,
uh,
new country, though. Old country, new country.
well, you know what? That's the thing. I kind of like both. I mean, I like the elements of both. But anyway, yeah. So because I can get lost in the music, I'm very lucky. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not up there, thinking, oh God, I played Hot Blood 1,000 times. I'm not. That's not for
Right.
me. It still feels great and fresh, and the energy of the audience. I mean, yeah, if we had to rehearse Hot Blooded 1,000 times, I probably wouldn't enjoy it. But in front of the crowd, it's great, and the energy has just been so spectacular that no complaints here.
Well, that's good. I mean, you are pretty much. That's also like part of like who you are. It's like your persona, and it might be just part of your meditation yoga. Always like the Switzerland, the chilled back guy. The medium guy between Doc and actually we might dip back and forth. I actually talked to Don and actually talked to George probably in the past couple of weeks. I,
Well, yeah, boy, things have really changed, haven't they?
well, here's funny. Like, yeah, well, growing up, obviously, like, I'm a Dokken fan, but I also hear the back and forth. It's yeah, some of it's press and back and forth as a kid. I didn't really care that much about it. I just dug the music. You know what I mean? As someone who's like a musician with some bands, I was always more curious about the questions they never asked about, like who's really writing the songs, what's going on in production, things you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
really hear about in the magazines. I didn't
right.
care if who was fighting with who, what's going on with cars and
Yeah,
all that crap. So I kind of you have to pay attention to it. So, but then over the years you hear things, and then like I said, I had Don on, and he said Don had a bunch of things to say, and I was kind of just let him say what he needed to say, cool with that. And
yeah,
then George didn't want to say anything, and I didn't really care. I don't really pull out of him. But what was really neat afterwards, I thought about it. I'm like, man, the dynamic of their two personalities. And that's why it's fun batting with you now. And I'm talking to you just a few minutes. It really can feel the huge difference in all of your personalities just in like 5 or 10 minutes of meeting you guys.
yeah. And honestly, everybody's a lot cooler than they were, in the heyday 30 years ago or whatever. But 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but we're still the same people, which
I
is
know, but
funny.
you know what I'm saying? It's perspective is probably different a little bit, maybe. you know.
Yeah, with time. I mean, listen, George is able to go out and do shows with Don, and there's been some nasty stuff going on in the press, but they're still able to do it. So, um, you know, uh, the thing that brings up is we did have a chemistry, and there was something about those
Oh yeah, you
unique
guys are the
personalities
perfect storm,
that
man.
did help create. I mean, I don't think I'm not one of those people that think conflict creates great music. I don't think that. It can be an element, but I always thought that the conflict in Dokken prevented us from getting as far as we really should have gotten. I mean, as far as we could have gotten had we
Right.
really utilized our talents. But I do think that the uniqueness of the personalities and where we all came from and how we work together is really critical. I mean, George and my chemistry is so complete. It really is.
George is so funny. George is so funny talking to him.
Oh,
Like I think people miss that. Like I don't think I even
yeah,
realized like how sarcastic he is and dry
oh,
in two
completely. I mean,
seconds. And I totally got it. And I loved it. It was like this is like
yeah,
one of the best things ever.
yeah. No, it's great, and he doesn't take himself seriously. And of
Oh
course,
no.
even back in the day, he didn't. I mean, we didn't really the same way, and Don kind of did. So it was, there was
Well, that's
always
what I'm
that.
saying. I mean, it's there's a little bit difference. Like within 2 seconds, I was this make believe manager. We were just making jokes about it with George through the entire interview. Like it was just like just riffing on that kind of, and it was fun. Where Don, he was more like sitting down, and I was more part of an audience, and it was like a story
Yeah, yeah, no,
and
no,
two different
exactly.
presentations in the personality, which is why I felt like I was like, oh, I kind of get it now.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
just different people.
yeah.
And I'm glad to see. I'm looking from the school. I'm glad. I'd love to see you guys get together and not tear apart what he has if he still does with those guys. I'd love to see the guys get together. I wish that like I heard Mick isn't really talking to anybody. I wish he was just talking to you guys as friends. Like, hey, we're friends. Like,
Oh,
not as a band.
I talked to Mick. I
Oh,
mean,
you do? Okay. I know
I
George said he
talked to
did
him
at
a
one
few
point.
weeks ago. Yeah, no, no,
Okay,
no,
good. That's
not
good.
not often, mind you. And
Oh no.
George, well, I think because George, I think, hasn't talked with him for a while, and
Okay.
it's not anything on Mick's part where he doesn't want to talk to George. Mick is an isolationist. He does kind of keep off to himself. He's kind of always been that way, and then he's got a select group of friends that he hangs out with. And Mick's other thing is he just wants it very clear that he does not walk back into the music business. And I think sometimes he fears that we're calling him because we're trying to
Oh,
bring him
okay.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm finally out. But
I was thinking
so
about that the other day. Yeah. That was part
yeah,
of the
yeah,
reason why he's like trying to stay away.
yeah, and I think it is to a certain extent. But listen, we're still. I mean, when the last time I talked with Mick, it was as close and personal as it's ever been.
That
In 2016, when we got together, we wrote one song, but it went smooth as could be, and the
yeah.
chemistry was all there. I mean, it was just like the olden days. It was that part is kind of bizarre that the chemistry is still there. But having said all that, if we end up getting back together, yes, I would love to make one last great Dokken record. I would love to do that. I mean, but Don's kind of made it clear that he thinks his current record is his last one. And if that's the case, I respect that.
Well,
That's cool.
he's actually a little open as I talked to him about that because I was like, it's hard to kind of close the door because I mean, as far as Dokken albums he's done in a while, I think it's one of the best for
Yeah,
different reasons.
I've only heard the one song, but sounded
Now I
good.
talked about his voice. His voice changes, just like Mick's bodies changes. You can't help it. You and George playing string instruments and vocally and the way you guys have done your lives, whatever, and genetics, whatever, are a little different. I mean,
Yeah,
those two guys
a
in the
little bit.
bookends, their bodies have felt a little more wear and tear differently, and you
Yeah,
live differently too. Yeah, let's be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think Don still even smokes, which is
Oh, he was
bizarre.
smoking and drinking when I talked to him. I mean, I
Exactly.
felt like I was at a party.
Well,
Uh,
and he's been notorious for being in places with a drink in his hand and a cigarette, telling people how he just quit drinking and smoking. So,
well, he was telling me how bad the drug abuse was, how bad you guys were when he was drinking and smoking, and how bad the drugs were with you guys doing piles of cocaine. I was like, oh, okay.
and he failed to mention his own thing that was
Well,
going on.
that's pretty apparent, and that's what people have a lot to say. And it was like, wasn't somebody in the chat? I think my thing was, I was like, well, it feels like the story's just a little uneven, and I think, despite everyone did drugs, everyone did a lot. I do want to say one of the things I have a question about, and this is more as a fan of the album, is Shadow Life album. He was kind of felt like he was kind of pushed into that one because of the power struggle. It was kind of like he had half-hearted into it, and you guys were really into it. I didn't want him singing a certain way. Personally, as a fan, I don't think it was not my favorite Dokken album just because it feels like it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
It should have been a
it
different.
did not.
Should have been a
It
different
did
group. Is
not.
what it should have been. You know what
It
I mean?
didn't come out great. No question. Yeah, I mean, well, that's pretty true. I mean, what happened was, I think there are a couple good moments on it, but I mean, it just didn't come out as a good, solid
Yeah,
overall doc. It would be a decent record of a new band that was coming out in the 90s trying
absolutely.
something kind of melodic, you know?
But a different
Um,
singer though. That was not Don's voice for that album. It just wasn't. Maybe Robert
yeah,
Mason could have done it.
but
Different
but
singer.
but we didn't force Don to sing a certain way. I will say that, I mean, I think he kind of caught the spirit of where we were coming from, because the opening track on the record, "Puppet on a String," which of course sounds nothing like Dokken, he really got into that. I mean, he was very into that. So don't let him get, excuse the album too much. But
No, I take
yeah,
everything with a grain of salt with Dokken at this point. You have to.
yeah,
That's
you
why I'm
do.
asking you a
Um,
little perspective
yeah.
on the.
But Don was also clear at the time, like, hey, I think we're kind of veering off too far, and he was right about that. I agree. So mixed bag. We tried. It was the mid '90s when we started it, and it was like, we felt like we had to try something new. And when we went off to Arizona to write the music, we were on fire. We were having a great time, and everything was going really well. I just think that when it came to doing the record, I mean, I thought Kelly Gray did as best as he could under the circumstances, but he was probably the wrong guy to pick as a producer. It was mid '90s. He was kind of, he had done Candlebox, so I think there was the thought of getting a '90s thing in there, but that's not what
He
the
said that was
audience.
you guys. He said that was you and George. That when he met him, he was like, the guy's like, yeah, I don't like your singing. Told this what Don told me that Kelly didn't like he didn't like John's this melodic, his little vibrato voice there. So it kind of felt like that put him in a bad spot. Once again, this is
Well, that's it. It wasn't that George and I were all, actually, it was our manager who suggested him, and we just went along with it. It wasn't a huge opinion on it. But when we met Kelly, we were impressed with his dedication of wanting to take us in a new direction, which is what we wanted to do at the time. So
right.
again, I think this is nothing against Kelly, but I think I think Don was right. He would have been the wrong choice. But Don he didn't make a big thing like, let's not use him either. So, I mean, I remember them talking about his voice, and Kelly saying he wanted him to do stuff. He didn't say he didn't like his voice, by the way. He said he just wanted him to try different things. And that was wrong. That's not what we should have done, but we did. It's over with, let's move on.
Well, I want to say in perspective that for other people, it was really hard. Is like, and this is more of a respective thing. Like any albums you guys have done have been different. The music always sounds good. It might not always be the right clicking. Even the different Dokken albums, the technical skills are always there. You know what I mean? For different versions of bands, you guys are always good. Sometimes just it doesn't. The magic's not there. But like you've been playing music and George since the '70s, and music's an evolution. And just like I talked to George about, like the Smoke This, the Lynch Biscuit we were joking about album. It kind of feels like sometimes is an artist evolving? Are they trying something different? Are they jumping on a bandwagon? Are you just growing as an artist? It's such a double-edged sword. No matter what you do, you're gonna get gigged on one side. You know what I mean?
That's right. Well, that's
So
the struggle,
you
isn't
guys
it?
being different during, so doing Shadow like trying to evolve a little bit. I get that, but I think in hindsight, and like most things, almost like a different name for different projects sometimes
Yeah.
puts a division line and gives you guys a little more slack to be creative without being beat up. And not because Dokken's a product, just like I told him, like Lynch Mob
Yeah.
is a product. Different Lynch Mob
Yeah.
albums. I'm not expecting to hear
Yeah.
Smoke This, hear
Yeah.
Wicked
Yeah.
Sensation.
Well, and that's it. And had we approached Shadow Life a little more united, I mean,
Right.
because when we went off to Phoenix and did the music, and we wrote a bunch of lyrics, and in fact, the song that they wanted to put as the first single was written in Arizona, and everybody got excited about it. But when we got to the studio, it got changed completely, and it got changed into something not great. And so, anyways, it got convoluted. That's the main thing. It really got convoluted, and you need clarity and direction. And we weren't united enough as a band to rise above that. Had we been more united as a band, we would have done the right things. But that's the problem with Dokken, is there isn't a cohesive vision, and sometimes there is, and when there is, we focus on it, and it's great. But when there's when there's dissension, it's very hard to congeal it into one solidified thing.
It's actually perfect. I think one of the things that I always loved about Dokken, and I think it's in a way your voice is almost like everyone says for a long time now, not anymore underdone. Like Michael Anthony was like the unknown, the big strong part.
Yeah,
Like you are the other part, and that's what I'm saying. That was also didn't really wasn't a big part of Shadow Life. I mean, the vocals and the harmonies is a big part of that, and that was always a feature of what you kind of
yeah,
do to it. You know what I'm saying?
sure.
And that was
Yeah,
missing, and that's a big part of Dokken to me was
yeah, I
that
agree. I
sound
agree with
together.
all that. I agree with all that. Yeah.
I mean, and that's I mean, you also are a lead singer of your own, so I mean, it's always gonna be a weird thing being a lead singer, but not a lead singer in a band with a lead singer.
Yeah,
You can harmonize with them,
yeah,
and it's gotta be weird.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't view myself as a lead singer really. I view myself as somebody who sings, and occasionally I sing lead.
You got a good
But
voice. I mean, let's be honest, you have a good voice. Maybe not a lead singer in a band where you're out there a showman,
well,
like David Lee
actually, I
Roth.
think I could do that part better than the
Well, that's in
singing.
your bass and the fancy clothes. I'm just talking about
I just
the
don't think I
swords and
have.
stuff.
I don't have the voice. I don't have a David Coverdale in his peak kind of voice. That's not my voice. And that's to me the kind of voice you sort of need with a rock band and a full-on rock band. And I don't have that. So, but I could go out there and certainly fake I could fake being a frontman very well.
But if you think about it, you've been with some pretty impressive frontmen. Like, I mean, Don is his own thing, and especially in his peak. You got I
Ronnie
love the
Dio.
fact Don's still singing and he do whatever he wants. I mean, Ronnie James Dio. I mean, seeing him, just thinking about last time I saw him, he didn't even need a microphone. I get chills with that voice that he can project. Like that skill level vocally. I mean,
Yes.
and even now with Kelly singing, and I'm going to say this: I'm glad Kelly got the Foreigner gig because I thought Hurricane was good with his vocals. I'm glad to see Kelly got a bigger stage to get
And
his
what
wares out there because
a
it,
fabulous
it was,
vehicle for his voice and his
but he needed
lead.
something out there because I would have hated to see it waste away because he's such a good singer,
Exactly. Yeah, I
and that
agree.
just feels like that was a perfect fit. You know,
It is the perfect fit, and he's such a great front man with the band. It's phenomenal, and yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some pretty amazing people, and one of my highlights in working with Ronnie was singing with him. That was just such a rush, and the thing is, Jimmy Bain used to do a couple of vocal lines here and there,
yeah,
but Ronnie was so excited that I was singing more, and we had so much fun. The last line on "We Rock," the song "We Rock," it
yeah.
ends, "We rock," and he would hold the high one, I'd hold the one right beneath him, and we rock. It was just, and I just remember I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Just the sound and the PA, and then we'd look at each other, and it was And Ronnie, when he was happy, was just so much fun. It was great. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, he was just 1,000% authentic. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just all so real with him. He was the real deal. He and here's the thing. His voice is kind of considered the quintessential metal voice.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But where it comes from is just as important, and it's the R&B, and it's the
Yes.
doo and all the stuff that he had in his background. I mean, he is just such an incredible amalgamation. When we were doing the Angry Machines record, I remember, Ronnie, when we would do the basic tracks, he would sing all day for every take. I mean, he's singing 8 hours or whatever, however many hours we're in there rocking. He's in there singing, which very few singers do. I mean, the only other singer that's ever done that was Robin McCauley. When I did an MSG record, Robin McCauley would sing on every take, which was so great and so old school. And it makes a band just on fire when you're all playing together, So he would sing with every take, and he was singing, and he was doing it partly to get his voice warmed up to do the real vocals, So he would even push himself kind of hard, and he'd even get a little bit hoarse, which Ronnie, it takes a lot for Ronnie to get even a little bit hoarse, but he liked that, especially when we were just starting to work on a record. So then he would at the end of one of the sessions one night, we were working on the song "Stay Out" or "This Is My Life." And we were talking about it, and all of a sudden we were like, what would it be like if it had like a John Lennon piano, like an Imagine piano kind of vibe behind it instead of, because it was
Mhm.
done on guitar. Tracy G had done a beautiful guitar arrangement. It was actually amazing what he did. But we just wanted to try it. So Ronnie and I went in the studio. Scott, the keyboard player, he wasn't there. So I was just playing piano, and we recorded a version, and Ronnie sounds kind of like Rod Stewart on it. And it's so amazing. I have been looking for I had a tape of it for years, and I've been looking for it because I wanted to get it to Wendy for one of these compilations or something, because it is just the most incredible vocal. If I can
I would
find
love to
that,
hear that.
it's insane. His voice is so, I mean, if they would have just put that out, it would have worked. Although Ronnie would have never agreed to it because his voice was kind of hoarse, but it sounded so cool. It really did. It was pretty amazing. And that's just a testament to greatness. You know, he Robin McCauley, Kelly Hansen, all these people, it's greatness. And that's an important thing.
But it's also, if you look at the roots, now we talk about like your shirt, people can't see it. I was complimenting earlier. It's awesome. I got the vinyl, and that's where you
Right.
kind of talk about like what are the roots or the seeds
Yeah.
of where you go. Like you say like who's your artist like, and then if there's an artist you like, well, they need to go back 2 generations to who they liked and who they liked.
Correct.
You need to
Yeah.
look deep and then go,
Absolutely.
oh, Ronnie had it. I mean, you look back, obviously, like you use Zeppelins and Foreigner, but what did you guys pull from? Because you guys were really more from the '70s, pulling into the '80s with Dokken. Like you guys had it. It all came to have it
Well,
was a mixture of different music. So in your
Dokken was
type,
pulling from 70s heavy rock a lot,
yeah.
obviously. Which is probably what we all really love, the Deep
And if you
Purples.
guys do an R&B though, because I can still feel that sometimes with you, especially in the
I'm an
cover
R&B,
songs you do.
I'm an R&B
Okay,
guy, but I kind of
all
came
right,
to R&B a little bit later in life, kind of after my first term in Dokken. I got into R&B a lot in the 90s is when I started getting to R&B. But anyway,
okay,
but also I had a really huge 60s Beatle influence that I
okay.
brought. So I think that was kind of what helped Dokken sort of craft its own sort of sound, is that way that we had those unique elements. And I did
The
bring them.
harmonies, harmonies in the backbeat, the way you guys would hold down differently, and the way Mick would kind of play his drums. It was not the same. And also a lot of rock bands back then weren't the same. And I'm not telling everybody to get off my front lawn type of joke I always make. It's more like the dynamics of copying each band are different nowadays
Yeah,
because it's not the same. It's more of it wasn't a blueprint before. It was like,
right.
here's some ideas.
Yeah, yeah. But boy, in the 80s, it got to be a blueprint, there's for
The
sure.
end of it was a copy of a copy
That's
of a copy.
that's what killed it, of course. Yeah, we were fortunate. We did have a uniqueness and I think an originality. Certainly Don's voice is incredibly unique. And when he was at his peak and able to sing in, much greater range, it was kind of the sky's the limit. And we had a real interesting take on a lot of stuff. Um, so I mean, I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for that chemistry that we had. And I'm grateful for the fact that we were able to go out there and do what we did. I mean, because there were a lot of bands that weren't successful. And we managed, again, we were our own worst enemies. And I think we could have been a much bigger band had we been more together, and kept it together. But for whatever reason, we got to where we did. And I'm kind of grateful for it.
You guys are like four different personalities. You're probably more chill. But I think the fact you guys got as far as you did with that many different personalities without having a Metallica therapist is almost
Yeah.
amazing unto its own.
Well, we did
The talent was there. It's just the personalities were just
actually
different.
in 95 when we were starting what was it called, Dysfunctional tour. We actually did have a guy come out and meet with us as a band, as a therapist.
And that's funny because Don said that too about that the Metallica tour. He said when Metallica would go on, I think it was, I'm sorry, like Monsters of Rock or whatever was going on after or before you guys, whatever. He was like, that's it. He knew it was the end of Dokken. Like, because if we had gotten the therapist and the stuff that Metallica was doing, we may have had a different chance. But between the drugs and how badly we were getting killed by Metallica, it kind of just that was his take
Yeah.
on it. But
Well, I mean, I think the drugs did have a lot to do, a lot to do with keeping the distance. But mind you, everybody was doing drugs.
Every band, that
We
was the
were doing
entire '80s,
cocaine. Don was doing his prescription drugs. It was like
right?
we were all out there. So, yeah, I think drugs played a part. But honestly, it was egos. It was egos and greed. That's really where it comes from. That broke the band up. And Metallica didn't have the therapist on Monsters of Rock. That was when they
No,
were
but
just
they were
young and coming out there and doing it. And
Nobody could have opened against them though. They were an anomaly. I got to be honest. It doesn't
yeah,
matter.
it
You guys
wasn't
were
an
good, but
honestly, it's funny at the time. I didn't really think of it that way. I didn't feel like we were being killed. I mean, I knew how well Metallica was going over, but
right.
all I saw is that we just weren't at our best, and that got me really angry. I mean, I got on the Monsters Rock tour, I got angry several times, more so than I ever had been, just because it's like, what? We're not going out there and giving our best. That's
Yeah.
insane to me. In a stadium full of people, you got to be kidding me. So yeah, I mean, I get what Don's saying, and I can see how that worked into his equation of quitting the band, but I think it's safe to say his main motive was he felt like the band had made a lot of mistakes, which I agree with. But there was things about Back for the Attack that we should have done differently, but it wasn't all our fault. It was kind of the conglomerate just wasn't working. But I think he really felt that if he could get the name and go out on his own, then he could, keep the lion's share and wouldn't have to share it with band.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a big part of it. But yeah, there was a lot of bad signs going on at the time.
I mean, I thought Back to Attack was good. I don't think I appreciate it as much as I did then as I've gone back over the years now. And the difference of all the music, even, under lock and key. I mean, I always with that one. Everyone does. In your Lord of the Rings outfits, we all, everyone loves to tease you about that's the best. But the music and like the harmonies, like there was nothing that came out. I remember I can tell you exactly where I got it when I heard it. I was like, there's nobody doing that. And that's the harmonies that because I also like Crosby, Stills and Nash. So when you hear Slipping Away, it wasn't so much of a ballad. It was to me, I heard 70s rock. I didn't hear like,
Yeah.
Freedom rock. I heard like Stills and Nash, and I could have been wrong, but generationally, I felt that's where you guys are coming from.
More where we were coming from. Yes, absolutely. Me
So
personally,
to me,
at
it
least.
felt right. So to me, it felt more natural as a rock album than as a ballad. It just felt like it was. And I've seen that. And I say that to tie in with your Heavy Hitters album. You've done two of them, but the newest one. I mean, you've done some Crosby, Stills and Nash cover. You've done some fantastic covers. And
I know. I think I have so much fun doing those records. It's just insane. I mean,
you do a lot of covers though too. So for you to be excited about it, because you've done a lot in your career. I mean,
yeah.
Some,
yeah. Well, number one, pretty much anytime George and I get to do something, I mean, sign me up. I'm in. I love to make music. I love to make music and I love to record. And I love that spark that happens when you do something together and there's a collaboration and the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I love that. And that the Heavy Hitters album is nothing but fun. It's not, I mean, it's us taking already, there's already a bed of a song there. There's a great song there.
Right.
And now we get to do what we want with it. Oh, heaven.
And you had good singers, and I'm going to say, and then as we both talk about this one, I love the second you had Bernard come on.
Yeah,
and the joke is really just in the interview. Bernard is the background vocals for Rolling Stones, but the way we said it, he was, George is kind of twisting it around. He's like, oh, I'm kind of concerned because I had the album that he was the singer. You got to listen to how he puts it out there because he's really funny the way he was busting on me. The whole little skit there, George was about Bernard singing it. But
was he saying like, the Rolling Stones singer or something like that?
For that, yeah, he was giving me grief about a bunch of things. He was funny but I got what he was saying, and we were like going back and forth about it. But on a serious note, we were just talking about how fantastic his voice was. That voice has another life of its own. I mean, the other first singer in the first album was great too. I'm not taking it from them.
Yeah, he was.
It's like there's never bad music for you guys. It's just always just different ingredients.
Right.
But there's something about Bernard. When I heard that album, I was like, I literally was like, I got to talk to Jeff and George about this, and actually maybe Bernard at some point too. I'm like, I gotta.
That would be great. I mean, honestly, I would love it if we did more stuff with Bernard. He's just a great guy too. He's just a great guy. And yeah, we had so much fun doing these covers. It's like really, and for him, and what's great is I wasn't sure how he was going to take to the Crosby, Stills, Nash thing. Oh. He loved it. He loved it, and he just fell into it so perfectly. It was.
Plus, there were some songs in there that it's like. Such a little delay on our talk, like even step over you. It's a cover song is definitely if you do a cover song. Sometimes you like it as opinion. Someone does it has to be like legit the same. Everyone has their own view of what a cover song should be. to me, I like to see it has a spark of the original. The band that's covering it has to have fun, but I wanted some of their flavor on it too. Like I don't,
Yeah,
unless
you
you're
don't want
trying
carbon
to get the record
copy.
label for screwing you over out of money, you just recopy your stuff so you can get the money, which I
Yeah,
support a
yeah,
band doing.
yeah.
Unless you're doing that, no,
Right.
have some fun with it and
Yeah,
rock it out a little
exactly.
bit. And there's some songs in there you guys supercharge. Like
Yeah, exactly.
I can't even think what song it was. There was just two songs in there that I wanted to bring up to him. This guy I talked to him, I can't think what it was. Was the Earth? I feel the Earth moved under my feet. Was it an album? One of the
Yeah,
songs you guys just rock.
yeah.
That's gonna be the one that it just rocks so hard. And I want people to check out all the albums, of course, but start at heavy hitters and then actually do like what I said. I went back. Bernard, I heard Bernard on that one. I'm like, I gotta go hear his other stuff. And I went back into Bernard stuff from there.
Oh, great. Well, that's it. That's the objective. That's great.
And,
Yeah.
and that's the goal. I mean, you and George have so much to go into. War and Peace. Both your bands are going to get self-titled. The jams. I mean, you guys have collaborated with I like that you guys did that with D. Snyder one time and Jason Bottom. You guys did Wasted Years, right? The Maiden one, I think. I think what time you guys did? Yeah,
If we did, that was one of those
a
project
long
things
time ago. Right. Well,
where
no, it's a one-off. It's just a one-off a long time ago.
yeah, and
But it
we
sounded
weren't
good.
in the same room when we did that.
Yeah.
So I
That was a
kind of don't even
time.
remember it.
Well, you know what it is? That was a time when I think it was in the 90s or 2000s, where they were like
Yeah, when
grabbing rockers and they're
Bob
throwing songs
Kulick was
together.
doing a lot of cover records and yeah, they were
And
covering
some of them
tribute.
were fun, though, because it was like, what would just artists like Dee Snider and you and Jeff, and then Jason Bonham on drums, like that sounded really good. Not saying
Yeah.
it would have been, I wouldn't say organically maybe together all your personalities. I don't know, especially back then.
Personalities would be weird, but that would be a great band. I mean,
But that's the album, that song sounds great because you
yeah.
guys have that power, his voice. It just,
Well, George and Jason Bonham and I did jam one time before the Foreigner thing.
oh,
But
wow.
after
That was
Rockstar,
huge sounding.
it sounded amazing. But it was when we were just putting the Lynch Pilson record together, and we didn't have any sort of thing, but we just wanted to get together and jam, and it was freaking great. It was really great. Yeah, Jason. I mean, because I had just done Rockstar, and this is when Jason had just cleaned up, so he was playing amazing, and it was great.
Yeah, that was Rockstar. It's funny, it's become such a cult classic too.
Yeah,
I remember seeing it and I was like, oh, it's so cheesy, but the music is so good. It's got
yeah,
some of my favorite musicians in it. But
yeah,
then over
yeah.
time, you're like, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like it's funny, like tongue in cheek funny. Like
Tongue in
it's
cheek.
good.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
You
I
can't take it
am
too seriously.
very, very happy with having done that. That was a great experience.
I think looking back, yeah, it is. And it's funny is I think the term rock star, I'm not a big fan of it anymore, especially like when people call themselves a rock star or a hairdresser. Like you want to grow up to be a musician. I think we stopped having rock stars once Robert Plant had grandchildren. There's no rock stars anymore. Even he's a musician. He's like a grandfather that sings. You're musicians now, and you do some really fantastic music that touches people's lives forever.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
and you've been and you've done it on so many different levels. You know,
Well, again, I feel very grateful for my career. I really do.
so what's actually tied into? So you actually on your website, you got a great website. You got to break down some bigger bands you've been in, Dokken and Dio and obviously Foreigner. You got them broken down. You got some. Well, let's talk about you do yoga and meditation, and it's kind
Yeah,
of neat because I believe you kind of use part of that also kind of pull you out of the stupor and the drug struggles you had
it did
during the
help.
time. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I've been doing yoga now since 1978, and it's become a
That's
very
amazing. I was 8 years old. That was insane.
integral part of my life. And by the end of the 80s, I was quite into meditation, and I'd spent quite a bit of time with my guru. So yes, it helped me because I got clean in 1989. I'm one of those who's very open about my drug and alcohol use. I got clean in 1989, and or sober, I should say, and yeah, I would say the meditation helped a lot because drugs are an escape, and drugs are a way of dealing with pain and isolation and all sorts of things. So is meditation. Meditation is a way of dealing with that, but on a different level, on a level where you're allowing the conscious mind to slow down and your awareness to take over. And once the awareness takes over, there's a whole different attitude that sets in. And that was the attitude I needed in order to get clean. So I credit yoga for helping me a lot. And that is why I am holding, I do a virtual meditation class. It's usually on Monday nights. Sometimes it moves when I'm on the road a little bit. But if you are interested in virtual meditation, it's a half-hour class. Go to Hot for Yoga SCV, hotforyogascv.com. And you can get the information on the virtual meditation class and come and join us. It's been really helpful. I started doing it during the pandemic. I started doing the virtual classes during the pandemic, and I've really, really enjoyed it, and I'm going to continue doing it.
Well, first thing I want to say, that'd be cool. People, if you're, obviously the podcast, also there's a YouTube show. If you're driving, don't worry about it. The link will be underneath it on the podcast and the YouTube. So don't worry about crashing your car, write it down. The link will be there to click on to go to the sites on all the platforms.
Oh, great.
I want to encourage people to go there.
Right.
And I think it's great. I think being virtual is kind of cool because especially, like being like an old guy, it's embarrassing because you're out of shape or mentally or physically for different things. So it's nice to feel if you can kind of do it in the privacy of your home, you don't feel so out there.
That's
I
right.
think that would is also going to be a selling point for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I mean, convenience is an issue. And a lot of people
does it translate? That's good though. Do you have like a struggle, like for people to communicate between the Zoom? Does it feel like
I actually don't.
There?
I mean, no, I think because it's inner work. You're working on your insides, so it kind of doesn't matter about the exterior circumstances. I have not found it to be a barrier. I think it's more of a barrier in physical exercise classes, as far as my ability to judge what people are doing on the screen. But other than that, I think for meditation, it's been very, very effective. The only other thing that is affected is we're generally muted. So if we're doing like chanting, I'm not going to hear the other people. And when you're in a room with other people chanting, that is a little
power. There's power.
Yeah, there's more power there. But having said that, been getting great results off the virtual stuff.
Is there like obviously there's different types of like meditation? Like what do you do? Because I know one of the things I've heard is like really cool, and it's like people say it's life changing, but as an outsider, I understand it. It's like transcendental meditation. So there's all different types of out there. Mm-hmm. Like where does this fit in the world of meditation for people that are starting?
The meditation which I teach, by the way, all real meditation is transcendental. That's the objective.
But you know what I'm saying? Like if you hear,
TM is a particular form of meditation. Mine, all that I teach is absolute yoga meditation, which has been around for thousands of years. I don't deviate with the formula at all. I teach, and basically we teach just a couple of simple meditation. We do some breathing, we do some postures, and then we do a different meditation technique each class. And we teach a handful of techniques because you want to narrow it down, and eventually in your own practice, it's nice to whittle it down to one technique that you practice. But you could take time to do that, whatever it may be. But basically, I just teach those very simple techniques. And I think a lot of people, they think it's more than it is. It's, it's easier than you think. Meditation can be difficult, but realizing who you are is not. And that's what we want to do in these classes. And it's, again, the mental blocks are the problem. So just get past those and you're fine.
See, I think that I can admit a lot of my mistakes. Believe me, I can. But I think for me, the idea of sitting still and not thinking about other challenges or struggles or problems going on, like anytime I try to do something like that, has always been like, that would be my struggle myself. Not like I could realize I make this mistake, and as a parent, like I could own stuff, but I'm like, but to stop thinking about it, oh, that's the challenge.
Exactly. But if you can slow, and by the way, breathing is very, very, connected to this. If you could
proper breathing, not just everyday breathing, because that's important too, people.
Yeah, if you could slow your breathing and then slow the mind, again, it's when the mind slows and eventually becomes still, that awareness, real pure awareness takes over. And when that happens, that's when the transformation occurs, and it's pretty powerful.
That is like, are there not like levels, but do you think there's a certain point where you peak in it? Like, as a person,
I,
like it's personal
here's what
growth,
I'm going to
not
say.
like challenges or belts, but just like as
My
a
my
person.
guru used to always talk about how there are no levels. You always are aware. It's just, where is your awareness? And often, most of the time, most of us, our awareness is in the distractions that the mind creates. and
Yeah,
um, and if, as long as we're living in that space, we're not going to, we're going to be distracted by those thoughts. So we have to learn to slow and control the thoughts. Um, so again, it's not levels. It does, while you're practicing, it sometimes feels like there's levels, but then you get to a certain point where you realize, no, there aren't really levels. There's just aware or unconscious.
okay.
and and that's what you come to. But again, it's all about the practice, and it's important not to think in terms of levels. It's nice to get little signposts when you're practicing, like if you get a little vision or you see something or whatever, if those things happen, that's great. But not to be distracted by those either. And so thinking in terms of level is another distraction. There you go.
I see that. I think it's easy to say that because I took martial arts and different versions of it. And you can break it up. And to me, just doing it is better, and the practice was the best part of it.
Yeah.
So I get that and that level. And I think to me is like almost like, but when you do martial arts long enough and you start to know, you know your forms and you know different things, and you do different things. You get comfortable in certain plateaus where you can achieve certain things, and you know that by doing certain things long enough, you start to achieve certain areas that you don't normally get. And I don't want to call them like levels, but I mean
Yeah.
you're
No, it feels like that. Yeah.
on your journey, you journey to places
Yeah.
differently,
Yeah. Well,
quicker
that's why I like to
than
call them
others to keep moving forward.
signposts. I like to
Okay.
call them signposts. They're just little signposts to say, yep,
Yeah.
you're on the right path. You're on the right
Not a
path.
contest or anything, just
But don't be
you do see
distracted
that.
by it. Yeah, don't be distracted by it. Again, it is not easy to slow the mind down. It is not easy at first because it's a wild animal. It's been going on for as long as you've been alive, going, wild and crazy with whatever thoughts it wants. Our society doesn't really teach that. It's kind of funny.
Mm.
We teach so much, there's so much learning and this, that, and the other thing, but we don't teach many people how to just be happy. It's very, very strange. And happiness can be very intrinsic. I'm sorry. Our mental state is what provides our happiness. So
Yeah.
controlling the mental state seems to me to be a very big key to getting happiness. And it's certainly worked for me.
You seem like one of those chill guys, especially and the stuff you've done in your life has been pretty amazing. It
Oh,
keeps you going, keeps you young, and
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's great. I think, and I heard you
Music
were doing
keeps
that. I
me
think it's
young. Music keeps me young.
well, yeah. And to that point, are you gonna like what's the next thing you think you can do after 400 to keep going? I mean, you're still quite young, and you're still a musician. I mean, well, there's a 4 year difference between you and George. George's like, well, I'm 69 and kind of getting tired of touring, but obviously he doesn't want to give up music. You can tell because
Yeah. Oh,
all
yeah.
he does is spit out music. Well, I think he did 3 albums while we were talking. Like he's always
Yeah.
doing something.
Yeah, I know.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm
he
like, do
loves
you
to
remember all
play.
your
He loves
solos?
the
He's like, nope.
guitar. I mean, God, what's wrong with that? Yeah, no,
So to
as far
you, I asked the same question.
yeah, okay. For me, well, again, I would like it if I didn't have to do after next year. I would love to not do 9 months
Tours.
of the year on the road anymore. And I probably won't. That probably just won't happen. But as far as playing live, maybe some of these projects we have can do some live stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of open to that. My main thrust, though, after Foreigner, will probably be just a lot of recording in my studio because I love to record, and
Mhm.
as much music as I can make out of there as possible. There is some Foreigner music that we'd like to finish maybe in 25, so I'm kind of hoping for that
That'd be
too.
cool.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. I just all I know is it'll be nice to not tour for 9 months a year after next year.
I mean, to me, I wonder, like you being you're always in the studio, you're always live, so your sound you're so tight with everything you do now because you do it so much. I, you know, do you do like a one off, a couple, War and Peace things, like do a bunch of all your different projects, do like little one
Who
off special
knows?
live things or things because you have like it's all of a sudden you're like, I got this time now, not forced
Yeah,
COVID time.
yeah,
I have all these
right,
great projects that I've
right.
fans have invested their emotions and time and money, but you know what I'm saying, into this love of mine. So you have these like little niche things that can be kind of fun celebrations.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm open to all of that.
Not about
It's
money making either. I'm just talking about
yeah.
music.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of not worried. It's just I'm sort of looking forward to the prospects of a whole bunch of new things. And my focus, like I say, is going to be recording, and I'll just keep recording and keep making music.
I'd like to see you do some lead singer project though, where you're kind of not just that, you kind of
Well, I will tell you one of my projects before I die is I have um I have a solo album that I have several songs in mind for that I've accumulated over the years. And it's going to be kind of a different solo album. It's not going to sound like Dokken or anything else. And that's why I'm not concerned. It's not a commercial project at all. I mean, some of the songs are kind of progressive. I mean, it's a very different project for me. But that's one that I plan on doing. Like I say, all my objective is to do it before I die. So, but that's going to be a very, very interesting record. Only a handful of people might hear about it, but it's going to be really interesting.
no, but that's what I'm saying. That's kind of
Yeah.
the show or this podcast. I mean, this too. I don't make money. I don't have a. I don't charge for it. I'm saying I do sort of love of music. I want to
Right.
celebrate how music has touched me and got me through everything in life, sad, good, bad. I can tell you a Dokken song. I can tell you this song. I can tell you. I actually think the Christmas song we should replace the Mariah Carey song is like we got you and George do. It's a Wonderful Life, I believe, or you do a song called
Yeah.
Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
That should be the Christmas one of the Christmas songs from now on instead of the other stuff. It's way more positive. That's just my take on it. I'm
Okay,
saying
cool.
music is healing, and I think that at this point in your career, you should do everything that feels good to you and creative
Mhm.
to you. And I
Well,
know
thank
there's
you.
people that would listen to it, and it's not about making money at this point because
Yeah.
unless you're Adele, you're not making money. You know what I'm saying? At a
Yeah.
huge level, you're making
Right.
money.
Right. Right.
You know,
No, that's my whole thing is I want to put music out there. I mean, I'll probably do some projects where I'm hired, and paid,
oh,
but I'm gonna do
eating's good.
also what's that? Yeah, yeah, eating's
I
good.
think eating's good, and paying for health insurance is good. Musicians don't have
That's
health
right.
insurance, people.
Yeah, that's right. But I do definitely plan on doing a lot of music just for the sake of and the passion of the music. And yeah, I just want to put it out there. I just want it out there in the atmosphere.
Put it out there. Put it on your site. You have a good website too. You got like blog on it. You got a lot of good stuff on it too. It's kind of cool
Mm.
just to keep building off of it. It's a good.
Yeah.
It's nice when an artist has not a ghost town of a website that goes up like every 5 years. You know what I'm saying? It's good when it's interactive. I mean, there's gonna be gaps because touring and whatever, and real life stuff. But I mean, there's a lot on there where people can jump on at any time and
Mm.
engage on it. As a fan, I'd like to you do more
Yeah,
stuff on it, more interactive media or songs, because you get away from
that'd be
this and kind
great.
of like a hub to kind of just you also have so much stuff to do. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
keep
Oh,
track of
that
it
would be great.
on
I would be up for that.
on media. It's hard to find everything on media for you. You know what I mean? On different
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah. And I'm not great with the social media stuff. That's where Michael Regan comes in and he does great.
Yeah, he is good. He is good. So shout out to Michael. Thank you. I should
Yeah.
set this up too. Michael was a
Yeah.
component in this one. Yeah,
Yeah. He's
he was.
he's he's been indispensable to me the last few years.
He's great, and he's smart. He said to me the first thing he said was because my interview. I don't know if you know when I talked to Don, he'd come out to where I live in Connecticut. He doesn't do this thing called the Big E Fair. It's a big, huge fair, right? And our
Mhm.
conversation centered and started off on corn dogs. Don, and he's talking about how corn dog. Someone gave him a corn dog. So first thing he said, he goes, "As long as there's no corn dog talk." Like so, clearly he showed he saw the doc interview. And he was busting on me about it just
Oh,
because it
I
was being
see.
funny.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Very
Gotcha.
funny, very aware that he's
Yeah.
here, but he's also funny and tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think that's smart. That
Me
was a
too.
good little thing.
Yes.
So, but I want to thank you, man. This is fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
you have so much good music, and I'm looking for hearing more music. I think, and I do think if you guys do a Dokken album, and if it works out in everybody's terms, because that's how the best things are, if it works for everybody, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that would be kind of cool because the chemistry
Yeah.
of all you guys together would be good.
Yeah. And we'd probably end up, if it did happen, we'd probably end up using Steve Brown, Mick Brown's little brother.
Yep.
You know what I'm hoping? Because I know Mick doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to record. He doesn't want to do all that. And Steve is still so vital. And Steve is
A lot of
such a
energy
great
there. A
player.
lot of energy for him. I'm
a
glad he
lot of
gets a
energy.
chance to.
And the thing is, though, Steve can channel Mick Brown like nobody in the world. I mean, it's even weird. Even his singing voice,
Yeah,
it's spooky almost. And he plays, so he knows how to do the Mick stuff, and he's just a fabulous musician overall. So if we did, we'd probably use Steve. But what I'm hoping is that somehow we can get Mick, at least like send him the songs and say, Mick, what would you do here? You know, and get his input on it, because Mick
right.
was a very vital member of the band. I mean, he had a lot of he's underappreciated for his contributions in Dokken. He really is. I mean, he was a vital member, and his voice really important.
Really, it's
Yeah.
hard to tell as a fan because back then he didn't get the same kind of press. He had the wild Mick Brown.
Right.
Talking to Don, he's like kind of like Mick kind of got a good part of the deal when things were split. He kind of came into this stuff and took off, and
Well,
then we were doing this, and it wasn't
yeah,
putting him down, but it wasn't like you heard Mick's credit of what he did.
yeah. Well, because and there is truth to the fact that that Mick did like to come in, do his parts, and get the fuck out of there. He was definitely into that, but that downplays how important he was to. I mean,
okay.
I'm talking about really in the heyday. He was very, very vital, and when we were working up the songs and everything, he was important.
I think even in the songwriting, I think as a drummer, he was a drummer, and I just want to give him a quick shout out just as a player in the band because he was also a standout drummer and it was in a style that he had and almost like he had a swing. There's something about him. I mean, there's a lot of
Yes,
rock drummers. So back then there was a swing. I don't know, a jazz feel. Some of my favorite rock drummers have a jazz feel swing to
because
them.
they grew
And
up on 60s and 70s music, which
right.
taught them that.
And that's something you miss in drumming nowadays because it's not like there was something about it. It just had a groove, and you're like,
Yep.
I don't think people can always copy that either. Because there's not a lot of copy Dokken bands, and I think part of the thing that you'd miss that the
Yeah.
harmonies because they were special between your two voices, and that's the drumming he did, and then you got to find George's tone, and he's still tone chasing, you know.
Yeah, of course he
And George
is.
has a sound in his fingers, so it doesn't matter what he does. It's
Yeah,
George. So
you're
you can
right.
try to copy him, you're not going to get it because it's
Right.
George, just like Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you had all those different pieces together from all you guys, and you got your stuff, and Don's got his stuff. But Mick
Well,
had his stuff that I think people should also be like, oh yeah,
yeah. No,
you know,
he was an important part of the process. And here's the thing. That was one of the things about Dokken is none of us approached the songwriting as like I'm the bass player writing a song and I want to put a bass part in here and what none of it, all of us, Mick included, thought about the song. And we were all really good about that. And surprisingly, in the good collaborative moments of Dokken, we were able to let our egos down and work collaboratively. And that's when the good stuff happened. So that's why I always challenge people when they say, well, the conflict between Don and George was what made the creative. No, that's bull. That just made us fight more.
right.
When we all got on the same page and all put our egos aside and just came up with music, that was when the chemistry shined. And, we proved we could still do it again in 2016, which blew my mind.
You were there, so
They've heard of Page and Plant, and they've heard of, Joe Perry and Steve
yeah.
Tyler. There's always that pairing. And, that always tends to end up, Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey fighting, all that kind of, the myth of conflict over the years has been built up by all these rock bands. And sometimes I think even in their cases, it wasn't the conflict that did it. It was the fact that they were all focused, and I think sometimes there are times when conflict can force you to be focused.
Yeah.
But with Dokken, that was not usually the case. Usually the conflict just spread us apart and made us kind of just, it ended up being not as great as it could have been. And that's my complaint about all those years is, had we really, really put our egos aside and really thought about the whole as an overall entity, I think we would have done much better.
Daltrey and Peter still doing it to each other. I just heard a story not that long ago where they're doing a gig, and I think Roger said something, and it upset Pete, and he says, "Watch this tomorrow night." And it wasn't that long ago either. I forgot who told me this, and it's not like an industry secret or anything. And they went to the show, and they had their set list or whatever, and Roger started going in there, and Pete just started with a whole different song. And I guess Roger's so focused on what the songs are or whatever, it like just threw everything. It was just enough to get, you know what I mean? Get that little screw, but that's what the dynamic of.
And these are
It's to this day,
75-year-old men.
right? And you're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I'm just happy you got out of bed. You guys are like still jamming, you
Well,
know?
that's why it's so bizarre to me when I mean when I still see interviews where people are dissing each other, or Don talking about all our drug use but leaving out his own. I mean, it's like let's be grown up here. Let's be adults.
And
And
I hope it doesn't change things. When I heard him talk, he said with me, it wasn't the end of the world. It was like he unearthed some huge things to me. But then I read a few more afterwards where he's like throwing some people under the bus. He's saying some things that I know these people are not even accurate. The way he's saying things, they're not even accurate.
yeah,
About
I
he's
know.
not remembering it. He's not remembering his parts. And I know there's like other musicians where they're like, that didn't happen. In fact, what Don did is this.
Yeah,
But that's not out there.
right.
And
Yeah,
that
I'm
upsets
not
me
going to
because
comment on any of that, but
no, you
but
don't
I
have to. But I'm saying
yeah.
it's a bummer because it feels like everyone's starting to get along. And I'd really hate to see that turn inward because he's saying stuff that
That was
maybe
my point. That was my point is, I mean, here George and Don were doing shows, and then Don starts doing that stuff in interviews. I just don't get it. But hey, it is what it is, which is why, in my mind, I would love to do a Last Dokken record. But if it doesn't happen, I can also live with that.
you guys have a good legacy. And I think, but also George didn't want to say anything, and you're not saying anything. Like the fact no one else is commenting on it, you guys are just like water off a duck's back type of deal. It leaves the door open that there's really less conflict if no one else is taking it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm again, and plus the fact is, I do own up to my
Right.
80s drug use. I do not deny it one bit, and I was a good drug addict. Very, very good.
Well, that's what. Yeah, you explained the outfit, the lock and key outfit. Those the
Oh, I wish you
overlook health. There's not enough drugs for that, right? That's like
No,
Scarface cocaine. Yeah, that's too much.
no.
But seriously, I want to thank you. You're I've been listening to music for a lifetime, so I really enjoy it.
Oh,
Sincerely,
good.
I love how honest you are. I love the fact that you still do other things outside of music. I want to encourage people to go check out
Thank you.
your site, check out the
Yeah.
meditation. Continue following you. And personally, as a fan, I would love to see you do the solo album because I like the idea of you branching out to something I haven't heard you do, and I've heard you do a lot at this point. So to
Okay.
me, like, how far can you go?
Okay. Well, I'll show you before I die. I'll show you.
Gotta hop on it though, because we've learned that the world is short and people get sick.
Life
So
is quick.
please
Enjoy
take
life
care of
while
yourself.
you can. It's
But
not
don't
here
wait till the
forever.
last minute.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. But
Okay.
thank you very much.
Well,
People, check out
thank
the
you
link.
so much.
This has been super fun. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. You have a great time. Thanks.